everybody. So I was here about 6 months ago, so I love this stage. Excited to see everybody again. So today I'm going to be interviewing Alan Aisbitt. Alan is a seasoned community veteran who's worked at many companies. I'll let him introduce himself in a second. My name is Larry Imgrund. I work as a product manager at Khoros. I work on community exclusively. I've been working in community since around 2010 when I started at Khoros. At that time, it was called Lithium. So yeah, let me hand it over to my guest, Alan. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Alan Aisbitt. I have been in the community industry for about 12 years now. I'm originally from Ireland, and so apologies if you don't understand anything I say. I'll try and keep my my Irish, my colloquialisms down. And I really got into community about 12 years ago, and I owe a lot in my life to community. Community is what brought me to America, and so I've had a lot of opportunities here, which have been fantastic. Some of the companies I've worked for have managed communities at eBay, at Robinhood, and at Splunk, and so very different industries with very different communities, lots of interesting experiences, and yeah, I'm very excited to be here today. It really is an honor to be here at CMX Summit and to be speaking. So, thanks to the team for the opportunity.
Yep. Thank you. So today we're going to be talking about the role of community and in business impact. So we're going to be asking, or I'll be asking a lot of questions around how to manage communities of varying scale and size, which Alan has had a lot of experience with. And we'll also talk a little bit about if you're in a situation where you're in a new community or having to build a new community from scratch. What's it like from that perspective as well? So we'll try to answer some of the questions, at least from our own viewpoint. So let's get into some of your experience managing existing communities. So when you first got into building communities, talk a little bit about your experience in at least when you started working in the role or you're getting hired for this role. What are the different levers that you're looking for in terms of signs for community advocacy in the leadership team or something like that. So how do you evaluate the company that you're going to work for and build a community for?
Great question. I'll share some stories. Maybe there's two very different experiences I've had as I was applying to different companies and looking for a role. And so I reached a point where I was at eBay for 10 years, and eBay is a very community-centric company. The whole company was founded on the basis of community. It's the community coming together and purchasing and transacting. And so eBay, you never had to sell ROI, community, why are we doing it? It just made sense. But I hit 10 years at eBay, and I decided I wanted to try something new. I wanted to work at a different company. And so I was wondering, where should I go next? Where am I going to go? There's lots of opportunities here in Silicon Valley. And I looked at my phone and I was like, what apps am I using? At that time it was Robinhood. It was 2020, just before the pandemic. Kind of everyone was using it. It was very buzzwordy. And I looked at their career site and I saw community marketing lead. I was like, this is amazing. This is exactly what I'm looking for. Their first community hire. Perfect. This seems like the timing was amazing. And so I applied, I got an interview, but there was some red flags, on reflection. We were talking earlier that I kind of should have realized going into it. And so I remember doing an interview with the hiring manager, and he was asking me for my perspective on community and what community could bring to Robinhood. And he was like, nah, I don't see it. He's like, I don't see the benefit of having a community here at Robinhood. I'm like, why are you hiring somebody then? So we had this back and forth where I was trying to convince him of all of the reasons why you would have a community. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here. I think we all know a million reasons why you should have a community, but he just didn't get it. He was a paid marketing background, and so he was interested in Google Ads and running paid campaigns, and so just didn't really understand what we could do through community. But I kept going. I kept forcing the issue because I really wanted to work there, because I was attracted to the hot startup And I think, you know, on reflection, maybe it wasn't a mistake because I learned a lot, but there was some red flags there. And so I joined and continued to have those conversations with him around selling the benefits of community. Why should we launch a community platform? Why should we do offline events? And it was just a real challenge. And so I ended up spending almost 2 years there. But it was constant fighting against this kind of anti-community sentiment at the company. And it's really interesting the way it panned out, because I don't know if you saw the news in 2020 or 2021 when Robinhood suspended trading of GameStop. And so maybe they were right. Like that was the community ultimately who almost like took the company down. And so if that had been on a Robinhood like owned platform, then it would have been a lot worse, I think, for the company. So I was able to go in and have some success and do Reddit AMAs and do college campaigns and do different things, just not launch a community platform. And so that was one where I think on reflection now, yeah, I probably wouldn't fight for that role. I think that ended up being like 2 years of being like a stressful doubting yourself. Why am I here? Why am I doing it? Like, am I crazy? Why do I have to convince people about community? And then most recently I was at Splunk and I had a very different experience in the interview process. Immediately I connected with the hiring manager. We had this great relationship. They fully understood community and we hit it off. And I joined and things just worked really seamlessly. And so I'd say watch out. You know, it was mentioned on the main stage earlier, I think, but you know, you should also be using the interviews as an opportunity to interview that company. You know, we all need a paycheck, we all need health insurance, but don't just try not to jump at the first thing that comes along. You should be assessing whether this is a good fit for you in your career. And so if you have the space to do that, one of the things that helped me as well before moving into my last role, I just made a checklist of all the things that I wanted in my next role, and I stuck to my checklist. So when the big flashy company came along and they had a role and it didn't meet my checklist, I navigated away. And so ultimately I think that was really helpful, and I'll do that again, you know, as in future when I look for a role.
Yep. So in terms of, you know, when you're interviewing from now on, or let's say you get the opportunity to work on a completely new community, what types of questions would you ask? And I don't know, what types of items would you focus on when you're evaluating, you know, this community or this business does need a community, and I truly believe this, and I'm going to go for it, or the Robinhood scenario where it's not. Like, what are some of those questions or areas that you would focus on?
Yeah, great question. I think, you know, the benefit of a community where it's already launched is you can go in and you can look at it and you can assess it, and you can see how healthy and vibrant it is, and potentially what help that they need. I'd say, yeah, during the interview process, like, ask the questions, try and meet the team as much as possible. Create an account on the community, go and experience the community, go and talk to super users in the community. You don't have to tell them that you're looking for a job, but you can go and test it out, and you can see what it's like. And I've done that in the past, and if you show up to an interview and you're able to say, you know, I've signed up, I've kind of walked the walk, I've talked the talk, I've posted on your community, my experience has been X, Y, and Z, and I think here are the ways that you could improve it. Like, that really helps. Also figuring out what part of the organization community sits in as well. For me, in my experience, what I found what's most enjoyable is when community sits within marketing. I've worked in support and marketing for a community. My experience, I'm sure other people will have different opinions. For me, I feel like when you're in marketing, you just have more backing, you have more financial backing, there's more opportunity to hire people on your team, and because you're potentially generating revenue for the business, is seen as a kind of revenue center. Whereas in support, it can be harder to get budget, it can be harder to get buy-in. I feel like the job itself can be kind of trickier because your metrics are different. Like in support, maybe you have to answer a certain number of tickets a day or respond to a certain number of posts. Whereas in marketing, if you can find a sweet spot in marketing and you can use the community to generate activities and events, I feel like that's a really good spot for a community based on my experience.
Yep. So let's say you have a community that's under marketing, but it started out as a support-focused community.
Yeah.
So there's this kind of internal conflict. Like,
Yeah.
how do you navigate that with, let's say, management or execs? Like, how would you kind of broach the topic with them and align the goals of the community to where it needs to be, despite where it's at?
Yeah. I think it comes back to why we're here today, is talking about like metrics.
Mm-hmm.
It's on you, I think, as a community manager to be your own cheerleader and be whether you're an individual contributor or a team leader or manager. You need to go and you need to be shouting from the rooftops about the benefits of the community, because I think sometimes as a community manager you can get in the weeds, you can be helping people all day and it's a lot, and then you don't necessarily go and tell the company about the work that you're doing. And so I would always try to pull out those success stories from the community, share those, amplify them internally, try and if the company has a town hall or an all hands, get on all hands and share successes from the community. But also showcase like why community belongs in whatever part of the org that you're in, or if you think it should be in a different part of the org. I think like dollars are a language that everyone speaks in tech, and so showing up and saying we had 10,000 posts on the community this week, an executive will say, I don't know what that means, right? I don't know if that's good or if it's bad, or it's like, so, but if we can go and show actually as a result of the community we generated X number of leads and we grew the pipeline and we had so many people show up to an event and we marketing touched dollars of X number of dollars, then that executive will start to understand, that's why community, not only is it like a great place for people to connect, but it also is an area that can grow the bottom line for the business. So I guess it just depends on what side of the fence you fall on, whether you think it should be support or marketing, and if you're trying to flip that around.
Yep. So in terms of positioning community, I know we've talked about it a little bit, but talk about your experience working with execs and when we were talking about this earlier, speaking their language is how you referred to it.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. I always remember when I first moved to America and had a corporate job for the first time, you've got imposter syndrome. You're like, what am I doing here? Why did they give me this job? You want me to talk to a Silicon Valley executive? Like, I have no idea. And I remember like a great piece of advice that my manager gave me. So I had written out this long email presentation, and I said, I'm going to send it to the VP of our department. She was like, no, like you need to kill at least 40% of the content that you're about to send. But I was like, well, no, it's a story and there's paragraphs. So when they read through the paragraphs, they're going to understand the journey. And she was like, they're not going to read your email. That's never going to happen.
Yep.
And so I had to get into the mindset of like writing out my thing and then like cutting it, just being more concise, like just be very direct. And so if you're ever in contact with an executive, usually it's like a sentence. They'll just be like, I need this now. And so you kind of have to speak like that. You have to speak their language. And so just be really direct. And just understand as well, if you're ever in a position where you have to present something to an executive or an executive team, you do your research on like who these people are, what their priorities are, what their teams are working on. If you go and you present a marketing topic to a customer support focused executive, like you wasted their time. And so it might be a great story, but they're not going to help you. So you really need to know, am I speaking to the right person? What are their priorities? And how can I leave the room with like getting their buy-in? What's going to make them say yes? How am I going to improve their life? And just get in and get out as quickly as you can. Don't go in and start floating ideas, because they'll be like, yeah, go and do that. And then all of a sudden you've got like all these other things you have to do. Just be very clear and get in and get out.
Yeah, that's a great advice, actually. I'm going to take that for my product work.
Just in life in general. Yeah, I tend to just waffle, and so if you can just be direct also, that just helps.
Yeah, it's I mean, in product, we always would refer to it as the HIPPO, highest paid person's opinion, and trying to work with that, right? So it's not about that, though, in my opinion. It's more about kind of like, sure, their opinion is this, but I have more data to back that up, like here's why you shouldn't go this direction. This would be a waste of time. And I feel like community is akin to a product role in that way, where you're a product manager versus a community manager almost. Because you have to manage so many different teams and stakeholders and understand what makes them tick. Not just the community users, but the business itself and all the different functions within the business. Let's see. When it comes to metrics for business impact, I know we touched on a lot of it. I think when it comes to measuring support success, or reduce case volume or something like that, I mean, how do you get to identify the metrics that matter to your business? And when we talk about dollar amounts in particular, what's your approach to try to figure that out?
Again, it's like speaking the language of the people above you is like really important. I think as a community team, if you're a manager, you're managing your team, like you can have your own metrics that you track. And so the ones that I mentioned around new user growth, replies, new topics, accepted solutions, sentiment, like those are all great things that you as a community team like definitely need to track, because they're signals as to the health of your community. But again, when you go up the chain, they're not necessarily things that people will understand or necessarily care about. And so, my most recent role at Splunk, I was reporting into the VP and the CMO of marketing, and so I just needed to figure out what did the CMO want to hear? What are the metrics that are on her dashboard that she needs to go up the chain to her superior? And so it was figuring out then how do I get the data to tell the story, and how do we get attribution for our community efforts? And so there's many different ways. At Splunk, one of the things that we did is we looked at high priority customers. So the list of customers who might spend the most on their subscriptions. And then we looked at the community data to say how many of these customers are actually showing up across our community platforms and our programs. And so we were able to, the numbers were really good. The vast majority of the valuable customers were showing up on community. A lot of them had multiple accounts and were returning. We could see that they were coming back. It wasn't just a one and done. And so that was a really powerful story to tell, to say, yeah, the vast majority of our community isn't just this weird thing where people just connect and hang out. Like, this is actually adding a lot of value to our most valuable customers' journey. And so we were able to showcase, here are the big brands, put some logos on a slide, here are the brands, they show up, they come back, and they get a lot of value from the community. So I thought that was really helpful. Another thing is like customer support, cost avoidance. I've used that throughout like all of my roles in community, and it always seems to resonate with people, even if you're, regardless of the org that you sit in. I've used Khoros a few times at different companies, and so Khoros gives you the ability to turn on value analytics. It's a survey where when people come into the community, they get asked questions. Did you get what you need? And then as a result, would you have contacted customer support? And so if you can get that data and then get to figure out from the company the average dollar cost for someone to contact support, and get all that, put it together, you can then start to churn out a number monthly around customer support, contact avoidance. And so I found that to be incredibly valuable as well. I'll share one more thing that we did at eBay. I thought that it was pretty cool and had an impact. And so this was like 2017, 2018. We had this idea, or we were kind of sitting around as a team, and we were saying like, the community is amazing, right? There's tens of thousands of people every day sharing insights, helping each other, resolving like really hard problems. But unless you know about the community, like it's really hard to find. You have to go to the footer and find it, and then like how do you ask a question? You have to create an account. It's like, it's not easy. And so we had this idea of, well, what if we, instead of somebody contacting customer support, they could actually speak to the community. So we launched this project where for a month or so, when you went to contact customer support, we put a button beside customer support where it said contact customer support or ask the community. And we had a super user program, so we gave them a heads up and we said, this is coming. We think this is going to be really incredible for you as a super user. Like, you're going to get so much visibility, you're going to get so much more engagement. They loved it. They were like, yeah, come on, more questions, like bring it on. And so we launched it as like an experiment for a month. And very quickly, within the first week, we knew we were onto something really special, because we were seeing a huge diversion in traffic from people who would ordinarily contact customer support, and they would instead go to ask the community. Because like, who wants to pick up a phone and call a contact center? Like, it's easier to go and, in my opinion, ask the community. And I'm sure all that will change with AI, right? There's just like a lot of different things happening. But a few years ago, this was a really big thing. And so I believe if you go to eBay, like, that's still there. And so very quickly we were able to put a dollar amount on more cost savings, and our super users loved it, our customers loved it, the people who contacted the community had higher CSAT ratings than our customer support agents. And so I guess the moral of the story is, like, just try and amplify as much as you can, try and get community more front and center. And that's like another thing is when you're looking and you're interviewing at a company, is like, how prominently do they display community? Like, that should tell you a lot as well.
Yep.
And then once you're in there, like, try and get it more front and center.
So a couple questions based on that, and we'll get to AI here in a minute on business impact. But so did you face any difficulties with eBay getting the more visibility for the community on that page?
Yeah.
And once you proved the value of that impact, was it surprising to the business, and did it lead to more opportunities for funding in different areas?
Yeah, there was a lot of pushback, because it's a very valuable piece of real estate. You know, eBay has ads there, so they sell that space for ads. They make revenue through that. But also they have, like, all of the links on the homepage are really designed for getting people to transact.
Yeah.
Because that's how eBay makes money. And so it was. We were like, well, you know, some of the questions were like, well, why should we put community here? That's not going to make us any money. It's a good idea, but, like, we could put a button there where people can buy things faster. So, you know, it was a battle. But as I mentioned earlier, the company generally supportive of community. They get it. And so we were able to win that battle, get agreement of, let's do this for a month. Let's see how it goes. And then, you know, very quickly, when you start speaking in terms of, we're saving the business millions of dollars, potentially per month, it becomes a very hard decision for someone to say, let's turn that off. It's like, how do we amplify this? How do we do it more? And you know, we launched some pilots about giving money back to the community. There was tools where it's really interesting actually. We brought on this software solution where we incentivized our super users to answer more questions, and then they could win prizes, they could earn money. And I thought, this is great. We're going to pay these people for stuff that they've been doing. They're going to earn a few dollars at the end of the month. They didn't care. They didn't care about the money. They just wanted to, like, I think maybe it then made that experience transactional for them. And so we actually turned that off after a while. After I left the company, I think they turned it off. But it's amazing the intrinsic motivation of super users to want to do the right thing and to help the community. But for sure, there's a lot of people who don't get community. And that's why events like this are great, because we get to, like, drink from the fire hose and then go back and then be evangelists for community.
Yep.
So thanks, CMX.
Great answer. Let's talk a little bit about AI, because it's the elephant in the room. And honestly, there's a lot of use cases that are kind of cropping up across every industry, really. Do you see AI, like, how do you see AI impacting the community business, you know, let's say short term, like 3 to 5 years, positively and negatively?
Yeah. This changes regularly as you, like, hear from people and hear different use cases of how people are using AI. I think initially I was concerned, and I remain a bit concerned about the community experience. And so, you know, if you think about the traditional community experience of going to a Coros and posting typing a subject, what's my subject, tagging it, typing out a question, checking my grammar, okay, post, and then you wait. Nothing happens. And then you wait like 6 hours, 8 hours, you get an email, someone responded, great. And then someone responds to say, can you clarify what you mean? So you go back and you post your question again. and then it's 8 hours for someone else to respond, and then all of a sudden it's this like multi-day thing for you to get an answer. And so like that might have been okay like 3 years ago, 2 years ago, but now everybody is like, you know, you've got like an Alexa in your house, you've got like these machines that can just give you instant gratification or answers. And so that's one area I'm concerned about is actually the vibrancy of community. Like, will people still show up and go to these community platforms if that's the experience? So I think that we might see short term, like until we figure out how to get AI into communities and bake it into the product, I think we might see a bit of a drop off. But one of the areas that I see a benefit or helping is indirectly really through user groups and in-person meetups. Because I imagine as you talk to ChatGPT more, you do more on your phone, it's a very isolating thing. You will miss human interaction. Like the reason we all do community and we're here is that we like being surrounded by people. And so I would imagine that as you spend more time with AI and you're not collaborating maybe as you would have in the past, you know, before you might have had to hire a team to help you build a website, now you can just do it all by yourself. You know, it's great, but also it's like, well, where's my people? And so I think user groups we're going to see more people attend in-person events to get that like feeling of actually real life engagement with people. I've used AI. I think one way it can help is in moderation.
Yep.
So, you know, I've managed a lot of busy communities, people who are like upset with the brand, they're unhappy. And so that leads to content that's questionable, inappropriate, where you have to take down and you have to, you know, do all the stuff that a moderator needs to do. And so I think as a community manager, you know, we all have biases. We all have things that we're not even aware of. And if you're dealing with the same people over and over again and they're showing up on your community and they're causing a bit of trouble and you're like, oh, it's this person again. This guy, whatever.
Yeah, this guy.
I think like your bias can come into it, right? When you're making a decision around, I have an opportunity to remove this person from my community. What do I do? Should I, you know, take the easy decision and remove them, make my life a bit easier? But one of the things I started to do in those situations is to use AI as like a sounding board and say, you know what, here's our rules of engagement, plug that into the AI. Here's the post, here's my interpretation of what should happen. What do you think? You know, I want you to act as like a moderator. And there's been a few times where it's turned around to me and it said, actually, that didn't agree with my opinion. And so that was really valuable to see things from a different perspective and to have more eyes on the situation. And so it led to me making some different decisions, which were fine. And then I think just as well, when you're engaging with members who are hostile or you know, angry, being a community manager and having to always type out messages individually and responding to people can be very draining, especially if you're in a volatile community. And so you can use AI to generate those messages for you and take all of that like legwork out and not have that be like a really hard experience for yourself. So I think there's a ton of benefits to it, and there's probably a load of cons as well that we don't know about yet. But again, I hear people say it, and I always say as well, like, embrace it, learn about it, try and be on the train rather than be stuck at the station. There's definitely benefits to it, and try and figure it out, because like anything, technology has it to everything, right? There's good and there's bad. So, you know, AI is just going to be the same.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of think back to the iPhone when that first started, you know, upending, you know, the mobile phone industry. And I think of now as kind of like the beginning of this new phase of life and the new era of AI, I guess. But yeah, for community in particular, you know, we definitely have been keeping an eye on trends and difficulties or challenges. Like, you know, in particular, like you mentioned, moderation is a great opportunity. Like advocacy management and all of that is probably the biggest challenge, because it's like, you know, how do you keep and retain those users and, you know, not discourage them when there is a bot literally taking their content and answering other people's questions. But yeah, you know, any last minute thoughts on you know, AI and super users and how we could probably improve the?
You know, I think there's two things I always think are like critically important for a successful community strategy. It's moderation and super users. And so I always like, I've used different things like moderating on our team. Khoros also has moderation services which we've used over the years, which have been helpful. But having a really good moderation strategy, sticking to it, being firm, making your community a safe space, don't tolerate bad behavior, especially if you're in tech, right? I think there's, it can happen where people have ego, they feel privileged, I've been around, I've been doing this for 15 years, I know my stuff, and so you need to really protect the community and make sure it's accessible for all, and make sure it's a place where people from all walks of life can show up and see themselves represented on the community, and not for it to be a place where the loudest voices win. And like, I've seen super user programs where the people in the super user program just have a ton of ego, and they answer all of the questions, and they get really upset if anybody outside that. So you kind of like, there's this kind of relationship where you have to really manage super users, kind of keep them on your side, have regular engagements with them, give them access behind the scenes, and then they'll go out and they'll be advocates for you. But I'd say those are the two things whenever I'm looking at a community or whenever I'm like helping out, is making sure that whatever moderation strategy you have in place and the super user strategy, those are two places that are absolutely critical. If one of them falls down, if your moderation is bad or if your super users like don't have a good time and turn against you, stuff can get messy very quickly. So keep an eye on those two areas.
Yep, totally. All right, I think we have some time for questions. Okay, one question.
Just one.
All right, so yeah, who would like to? All right, how about Donnie?
We got a mic coming, yeah.
Great. Hello.
Hi.
Great presentation, and I have so many questions, but I think the one that really, Alan, I love what you were sharing, because I've kind of been in the same boat, and one of the really hard things to do, in this journey of community value, I think support deflection is probably one of the easier ones, as far as the cycle to measure. One of the most challenging pieces is actually that advocacy piece and tying the value of community engagement interaction to the business. So in describing the value you're able to measure on the top accounts, I think it was at eBay or Splunk?
Splunk.
At Splunk. What were the milestones in your journey to get that data? Because that's actually really hard to do. I was able to do that at Domo, but it's a journey. And again, most people, I think, there are very few companies that actually are successfully doing that. So it'd be really good to share that.
It's really hard to do it. So I'll tell you how I did it, and I'm not in any way affiliated with any companies or. But one of the reasons why we were able to do it and tell that story, someone reached out to me on LinkedIn and sent me a DM and said, "Hey, I'm working at this software. It's called Common Room. Can we give you a demo? It helps to do all these things." And I was like, "Sure, whatever." And I left a demo. I was like, "How much money does this cost? I'm gonna like move mountains to get it." Luckily, it actually was pretty inexpensive in terms of like community software. It's pretty cheap. And so with Common Room, at Splunk, we had 3 real community platforms. We had Khoros, we had a Slack community as well with like 30,000 people in it, and we also had Bevy. So we had 3 platforms, all with their own data sets that never talked to each other. So you could do analysis on one, but you didn't know if that was the same person over here because people had different email addresses on the different platforms, or they might sign up with a married name, maiden name on it. So all these different things where it's really hard for the data to be clean. And so with Common Room, they have a lot of like AI in the background and proprietary tools to actually clean up that data and pull together an aggregated list of who customers are. And so it's very simple. All we just logged in and kind of put in our credentials for the different platforms into Common Room. And within a few days, it took to kind of ingest all the information. And then very quickly, we were able to pull a list of all of the organizations in our community, all of the individuals in those organizations, who was on Slack, who was on Khoros, who went to meetups. And so you could see this person posts a lot on Khoros. They also go to a meetup in Denver, and they also are like really active on Slack. And then, and here's the amount of ARR that their company spends with us. And so it's amazing. Like, it really is an amazing tool. Without that, I'm not sure how we would have done it. It made our lives really easy. And so I'd recommend, if you've got a bit of budget and that's a problem that you're looking to solve, explore Common Room.
Yep. Great question. Thanks everybody for having us. We really
Thank you.
appreciated it.